If you've seen all of the previous 14 episodes of my 240SX version 3 rebuild, thank you so much for watching. This is officially going to be the final episode, and I say that just because after this I'll be driving the car around a lot more, enjoying it, doing things with it, hopefully taking it to a drift event, but the rebuild will officially be done once I get this body kit on. Of course, there's tons of other things I still need to do to the car, getting it dialed in and everything. It's an ongoing project that's never finished. But after this, I'm gonna shift gears and start working on my 1983 Audi Quattro, which should be a lot of fun. I know a lot of you are excited about that. On the last episode, I took this car out for a little filming day and kind of a bit of a shakedown, and I ended up tearing the airline out of the driver's side front for the air ride. So the thing just went all the way down to 0 PSI, and I kind of caddy cornered the air suspension so that I could limp the car home. Luckily, I was only a few miles away, but let's jack this thing up and see if we can figure out exactly why that happened and if I can prevent it from happening in the future. Getting a jack under this car to begin with isn't the easiest thing. Luckily the side skirt's not on it, so that helps a little bit, but I should be able to jack up the back a little bit since the rear air ride still works perfectly fine, and then we'll slowly kind of work our way towards the front until we get that wheel up off the ground. Already got this thing nice and dirty driving it around in the rain. Got mud on the floorboard here and all kinds of stuff. Sheesh. When you hear this sound on an air ride car, not good. It's basically just air escaping immediately through the front airline there. All right, so I was able to get that jack under there and jack it up from the frame, which is nice, probably a little bit safer. This had never been a problem before in the past, and I added this bulkhead fitting to hopefully improve the reliability of the air ride system. So it's very ironic that this ended up breaking because I was certain that this thing had plenty of room, that it wouldn't foul, but when the car was low enough, I think it was just, the tire was just close enough in there to hit it and knock it off. So I think what I'm gonna do is move this airline up to a different hole that I'm using for the hood latch release cable. This hole's way further out of the way. It's higher up, it's further back in there. So there should be no chance that this tire's ever gonna hit it, but that's kind of what I thought with the last one. It's just sometimes you think that what you're doing is right and you end up messing it up even worse, and you gotta kind of work out some of the bugs like this here and there. Kind of just happens, especially with things like air ride that are totally custom. So I'm also gonna have to take a look at the other side at some point, make sure that's not a problem either. That's a pretty simple repair when you've got a nice clean garage and all the tools you need at your disposal. I didn't really have anything with me when that happened, and one of the more important things you should always keep with you on an air ride car is one of these junctions. I'm gonna use one of these to just fix it temporarily for now, and then at some point I'll replace the entire airline from the manifold all the way to the bag. I just wanna make sure that I don't put a brand new one in there and have it foul right away. So I'll leave it on there for a few weeks, do a couple, 100 miles on it, make sure that it's all squared away, and then I'll put a nice one on there. So these can basically connect two airlines that have potentially been ruptured, or maybe you just have one that you cut for whatever reason, and it can really help you out in a roadside repair if you ever need to do that. So hopefully you never end up using one of these. I usually keep a couple of them in the car, but the car had just been fully redone and completely cleaned out when I painted, so I had no tools, no spare parts with me whatsoever, but luckily I was close to home and was able to limp it back. Let's get started on that body kit. Of course, they have no idea what kind of engine is in your car, so give you as much of this vent as possible. Like a V8 probably wouldn't really have anything at all up here, no intercooler. So they make this part really long, but I think my intercooler is almost straight up and down, and I could probably just eyeball like a line going straight through this. I think I'm just gonna cut about 1 inch off to start with, and then we'll just put the thing back on and see how it looks. I am not gonna forget to wear my mask on this episode. Last time, got kind of a sore throat and a lot of white stuff in my nose, and that's not good. I'm trying to live long enough to finish this car. All right, it's going good so far. I'm always trying to hold the vacuum with one hand and grind with the other, so it's a little bit difficult, but it's definitely worth sucking up that dust so that the least amount of it gets all over the garage as possible. I'm gonna hold it up a few times to the car and kind of just cut more, match it up, see what else needs to be cut. Probably have to cut a little bit of the intercooler piping area on it, and then it'll be kind of ready to mount. So wasn't exactly sure how to mount this. I kind of slept on it a little bit and went back and forth because usually this would obviously mount to the fenders, but also the core support, and I don't have a stock core support. So these middle screw holes, as much as I don't want to admit it, will probably just end up being zip tied to the bash bar. These corner ones, I think I'm gonna do riv nuts, and then here might not end up having anything in it because there's like literally no piece of steel where that hole is. So we'll see, and yeah. Somebody said this grill looks like an R32 grill, and now that I've seen it, I can't unsee it. It's pretty cool though. It is kind of funny, you'll measure up the bumper and then you'll cut a little millimeter off and think you're close. You'll cut another millimeter off and another millimeter off, and then half an hour you've cut an inch out of the bumper and you're wondering how you ever thought you were close in the first place. But problem is if you just full send it and start cutting like crazy, you'll end up cutting way too much, which isn't always a bad thing because you do want to keep the bumper a little ways away from some of that piping and stuff. Stuff does move around a lot, and I pretty much guarantee that it's going to rub at some point. It was about 6 or 7 times putting the bumper on and off and on and off, and the garage is completely covered in dust now. I was kind of just taking these 1/4 inch pieces at a time as I went, but the bumper is fitting really great now. The intercooler piping looks really cool. It's actually pretty symmetrical. My buddy Robbie did a great job on the intercooler piping, making all that stainless stuff and getting it looking nice. A lot of times SR intercooler piping looks kind of weird. It'll be 2 different sizes, but the garage is covered in dust now. My cameras are covered in dust. My kids' bikes are covered in dust. You know, the TV and everything. My coffee's got dust in it now, but whatever. Let's get this bumper on. I'm gonna use some riv nuts, I think on the fenders. The holes that I was originally anticipating that the bumper would mount to and the fenders don't line up, and there aren't any holes drilled in the fenders yet. I had to clearance it quite a bit in here, and so the holes are gonna have to be drilled about 1 inch further forward, which is totally fine. Unfortunately, that's really gonna be the only thing attaching the bumper to the fender is just that 1 bolt on each side. Luckily, the weight of the bumper and everything mainly will be resting on my crash bar, which is, you know, a totally normal thing to do. I'm pretty sure I've tried this before and I can't remember if it worked or not, but basically the idea is the fiberglass doesn't have, you know, very strong material to grab onto. You'd normally use a riv nut in a piece of steel or aluminum. So the idea is you slide this through the hole of the fiberglass, and then on the back side you put a washer on it, and I'm hoping that this riv nut will be able to grab on to that washer to, you know, maximize the surface area of what that riv nut has to hold on to so that it doesn't rip out of the fender so easily. So that definitely seems to have worked in theory. It's holding the washer on, and like I said, the surface area will be expanded hopefully and will keep this riv nut from ripping through the fender. So let's try it and see if it actually works in the real world. I will drop this washer through. Well, the washer's in my hand, which means it didn't work because the thickness of the fender was just enough to push that washer up a little bit too high, and when the riv nut started to expand, it wasn't able to grab onto that washer. It did grab onto the fiberglass. The riv nut is stuck in there, but for how long, I don't know. It could last forever. It might only last a few days. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. If it gets pulled out really easily, I can always, you know, I've got 2 holes. I can always just put a screw through it with a nut and a washer on the other side. So it's really not that big of a deal. It would have been kind of cool to have that all figured out, but I might just say that it worked for my Instagram video just because I think it's kind of a cool trick. And if I had slightly longer riv nuts, it probably would have. Maybe I'll order some. Sick. I'm gonna do this side, turn off the camera for a little while so I can just concentrate on that, but I will circle back and start wrapping this. I got a little bit curious about where this corner hole actually goes, and I wasn't planning on using it, but I'm glad I looked because I popped out the corner marker and saw that this hole actually lines up perfectly with where this fender is. So same treatment, I put a riv nut in there, and I'm gonna have to use a little button head Allen for this because it needs to be really low clearance. I'm not sure how the OEM configuration is, but I realized that with the corner marker back in there, it's gonna hit anything that's taller. So that'll be nice to have 4 bolts holding the bumper in. I still haven't figured out what to do with these middle ones because they don't really line up with anything. They're kind of just out here in the air. So I suppose I could make some type of bracket that attaches to the bash bar, but I think that'll just be for another day perhaps. It finally stopped raining, the sun came out for a little bit and dried things out. Unfortunately, after I finally finished grinding all this stuff and sanding it, I hit this with the orbital and got it nice and smooth. Even this expensive body kit isn't quite perfect, but it's pretty dang close now. This will probably take me the rest of the day. It's gonna be pretty complicated getting all that finished up. I'm always on the fence about whether I should wrap it with the bumper mounted on the car or take it off, because being on the car, it makes it harder to get in behind in these little spots so that you can roll the vinyl over. So what I normally end up doing is leaving it on the car like this so that you have the leverage to be able to pull that vinyl and stretch it. And then once it's like 90% done, I pull it off and like roll the edges over. So it'll be purple by the time we're done. I'm anticipating that one of the hardest parts of this will be to not cut a relief seam here. Since you're cutting such a sharp corner, the vinyl is gonna tend to bunch up, and I try to do a pretty good job pulling it and stretching it around it, which definitely helps because since that stretches out the vinyl, when you heat it back up again, it'll shrink a bit. So not sure if I did it enough. Of course, you don't wanna stretch it too much either, but we'll see when we get to that road how that goes. Just one little piece at a time here. I ended up taking the bumper off the car, which sucks because now I can barely pull on it without it moving all over the place, but having a hard time getting the wrap around where this pull is and pulling it properly, and the hood was getting in the way. I want to be able to do this top of the bumper, so maybe I'll flip-flop putting it back on, back off. It's just 2 screws right now, so it's trying to get this corner. This whole corner here is definitely going to be the hardest thing on each side, and once that's done, the rest will just be flying through. I'm obviously trying to stretch this the least possible, but some places it's nearly impossible not to. And KPMF that makes this vinyl is pretty clever. They make the backing black, which is the first time I've seen that on vinyl. I think the darker colors get that, so that if you stretch it a little bit too much, it just starts to get a tiny bit darker rather than more light. We are easily past the 1 hour mark. Crazy how time just flies by. Trim some of this excess off. This is when it starts to feel really good. Start seeing some of the edges and things, and makes you happy. Start to realize why you spent so much time on it. Of course, all this work will be undone the second I blow this body kit off on a speed bump and run it over. Definitely a little bit helpful to get this thing a little bit higher up on the lift. I don't know why I didn't think of that earlier, but my back is killing me after all the sanding and things I did earlier, so I'll be glad to take a little break after this. The bumper is finally done. That took for frickin' ever, pretty much all day to get that thing mounted and wrapped, but it looks nice. I'm really happy with it, and I think the car is gonna be so sick finally with the new body kit. So I'm gonna switch gears for a little bit because I'm sick and tired of looking at this vinyl. I got a package in the mail just now from GK Tech. I needed to get some new studs. I cross-threaded a stud last week and ended up having to cut it off because I couldn't get the nut off of it. It ended up spinning the stud. So I'm gonna put a brand new one of those on. I got some new spacers and then also a radiator kind of diffusion panel for the core support, but we'll put that on at some other point. It's not really a priority right now. These studs are an extra 20 millimeters long than the stock ones, which means you can run up to a 20 millimeter spacer. What's cool about spacing out the studs is you can switch, all different size spacers on if you're really into your setup and need to change grip levels based on track width and all that. It gets pretty complicated. Anyways, I wanted to run a 20 millimeter spacer, so this was perfect, and just needed to replace it with one of these brand new ones. Pretty simple. I just slipped it through the back here, and then I'm gonna take a nut that is like way oversized, put a little bit of grease on it so that it can slip, and put that over the stud here with another nut that will thread on exactly the exact same threads as my stud. This will push against the stud and hopefully pull it through, take the impact, and just ram that sucker home. This is usually pretty straightforward if you get the right size studs. The studs have different size backs on them, and that can get a little complicated sometimes. If you order the wrong ones, it can be a major pain in the butt. I'm pretty much ready to move on to the rear bumper, and I was gonna flip the car around, but before I get too excited about that, I figured since we've got it here, I wanna see if I can get the hood to fit a little bit better. Probably like 5 episodes ago, I welded on some core support mounts for the headlights because mine were pretty badly damaged, and I had to make a hood latch bracket because my intercooler had been attached to my hood latch, and over the years had pulled my hood latch so far down that I couldn't latch the hood. The hood latch was probably in the right place though, come to find out, because now that I've moved it up 2 inches, the hood really needs to go down much further. And what I did was I unbolted the bottom brackets of the intercooler and kind of just let it hang for the last few weeks, and it's been gradually pulling the hood down, but I need to see if I can bend it further and then modify my bracket so that it's got a little bit more adjustment and I can actually pull that thing down all the way that it's supposed to go. One little bummer is that the hood is actually hitting the engine, so I might do like those little spacer things in the rear, but I'm not a huge fan of that, so that might just have to get ground down a tiny bit, and we'll see where it goes from there. But let's see if we can get this thing low enough. It needs to go down probably 1 inch. I made this slot in the bracket so I could move it up and down, and kind of started towards the middle bottom here, but I've pulled it down so far that it's at the top now. So I'm gonna drill a new hole and slot it even further and just kind of go nuts with it and see how close we can get that hood dialed in finally. I was pretty much willing to do whatever it took to get that hood to fit. After I mangled that nice bracket that I had made, I found the heaviest thing I possibly could, which was the old differential out of my E30. Weighed that sucker down. I think it probably weighs like 60 pounds, and it still wasn't enough, so I was pushing and pushing as hard as I possibly could to get that hood down and lock that bolt down tight. I don't know why, but the hood does not want to go down. It's pushing against something, which I'm assuming is the motor because I can see where it's rubbing, but kind of ridiculous that the thing just doesn't fit. Whatever. Then I took the mallet and a humongous screwdriver and just hammered the corner marker brackets in until I had them bent properly to fit the corner markers and the headlights exactly how I wanted them. So the headlights are much cleaner in the right spot now with the body line along the hood just perfectly like they should be. So getting it all back together now, and then we can finally move on. This front end is looking nice. I flipped the car around so I could have some more room back here to work on the rear bumper, and the front bumper ended up hitting on the lift, which has never been a problem before. I wasn't really expecting it, but pretty much broke that thing pretty badly, like a 4-inch crack in it, and destroyed the vinyl, of course. So that's kind of a mood killer. I guess I'll get this rear bumper on now. It needs to be clearanced for the bash bar, but yeah, that really sucks. Just gonna have to fix it eventually. Didn't even get it outside. This rear bumper fits great, just like I was expecting. Really all that I need to do is trim a little bit of the over fenders in the rear. Since I bowed them, it makes part of the over fender kind of protrude into the wheel well, and the bumper wraps around that, so clearly it's not going to fit if that's been moved an inch or so. Chop those off with the cutoff wheel, and then we'll start wrapping this thing. Now that I messed up the front bumper, I'm not exactly so persistent on trying to make everything as perfect. It kind of hurt my feelings, but I don't even know how I would make this, you know, not a million pieces, because the right angles here just make it so difficult. But I'm gonna try my best, you know, make it look really good still nonetheless. There's plenty of room back here to work around it, hopefully. So we will get this thing going here, and I guess then we'll have a purple car almost. I just gotta do the side skirts. It takes about 10 feet to wrap a bumper. You measure it from tip to tip. It's 120 inches on this rear one, and that eats up the yardage pretty fast. You run out of vinyl pretty quickly. This car took a lot more vinyl to wrap than a normal car because I pretty much wrapped the quarter panels twice, because I wrapped under the over fender and then I wrapped the over fender. I wrapped the interior of the car where all the delete panels are back there. And then, I mean, there's like side skirts and things like that that normal cars don't really have, sort of. So it pretty much ate up that whole entire roll, and I'm a little bit worried that there might not be enough for everything. I might not even have enough to wrap the lip. And I wrapped the door sill on the driver's side, and I might have to order more vinyl to wrap the passenger side. So we'll see. I don't think I'm even gonna be able to put the lip on. The front bumper is already so freaking low. I already smashed it on the lift, and yeah, the lip's gonna add another ½ inch. So I don't know how that's gonna work. It's been a pretty long couple of days getting the wrap finally finished on my brand new body kit. Matter of fact, it's been a pretty long couple of months getting this car done. I was expecting to have this thing finished probably in like late January, maybe February, and that clearly didn't happen. I'm not really sure what I was expecting doing 15 or 16 episodes with this thing, because it definitely took a while, but the car is 95% finished now. I tried so hard today. I spent 6 hours wrapping the rear bumper and just barely got it done. The sun is starting to go down now, and unfortunately, just running out of time, I didn't finish the passenger side skirt, and I kind of took some time to myself and turned the camera off for most of the day, because after breaking that front bumper, I was pretty upset, and I'm sure any of you would be. So definitely taking it all in stride, but the car looks amazing. I am completely in love with it. It really turned out exactly like I wanted it to. And I mean, I wish a few little details were a little bit nicer, a little bit more refined. I wish the paint was perfect on the interior. I wish the wrap was perfect. I wish, you know, everything fit like it does. But some of these things you just can't do. They don't make you know, metal wide body like this. I would have to make it myself, and it would take who knows how long, months for me to learn how to do that. So really happy with how the car is now. Can't wait to start driving it. I'm gonna have to start to figure out how to get it around because I already ripped the bumper off even just trying to position it like this in the driveway. So gonna have to get used to having this thing slammed. Even though it's on air, I'm still getting caught up on stuff. But pretty much ran out of time today. Tomorrow I've got to fly out to another job somewhere and just really don't have time to spend any more getting it more refined. So there's gonna be another episode. That's the good news. It needs turn signals, it needs new window switches. There's a bunch of nuts and bolts and things that need to be checked and covered. And of course that side skirt needs to be wrapped. I need to wrap the door sill on the passenger side and all of that. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for following the long journey of getting this thing all squared away. Version 3 is pretty officially finished. I'm not gonna quite say it's done, but it's dang close. Thanks for watching. Check your polarizer.